Now that you have an understanding of the chatbot codebase, let's add features to the UI and implement a new tool for the chatbot. Now that we've gotten up to speed on this codebase, let's talk a little bit about some features we might want to add. We saw before, in this application, when we ask for an outline of a course, we get some really detailed information, and we even see some of the sources that are referenced. At the same time, when we see these sources that are referenced, it would be really nice to be able to click on these as links and go to the source of truth. So we want to build an interface where the front end and back end are correctly rendering links to show where this data is coming from and not just some text. So let's hop over to Claude and talk a little bit about how to get started. What we're going to do here, instead of just asking Claude to implement the feature necessary, we're going to make use of two important pieces. The first one is referencing the correct file, and the second is using plan mode. When we talk about referencing the correct file, Claude Code is only as good as the context that you give it. So when you ask Claude Code to make changes, it's important to make sure that we're figuring out the right files we need to modify. We can have Claude Code try to figure this out, but if we know out of the box what files need to be modified, giving Claude Code this context right away makes the tool much more efficient. So let's see how that's done. I'm going to open up Claude Code, and to reference a file, I simply use this @ and tag that file. For a folder, I can reference files inside. For a file directly, I can go ahead and even use tab to complete for the full file name. With that in mind, let's talk next about the second important piece when building features or making larger changes. Instead of having Claude trying to figure out what needs to be done and write the code right away, we're going to follow a slightly different pattern. We're going to plan first. We're going to have Claude create a detailed plan for what changes need to be done. And if we approve that plan, we're then going to have Claude Code make changes to quite a few files. When you have slightly larger changes to make, we always recommend starting with plan mode so you can give Claude the opportunity to figure out what needs to be done before it needs to make those changes. To activate plan mode, I'm going to press Shift-Tab twice, and we'll see here that plan mode is on. Let's showcase what needs to be done. I'm going to bring in a prompt that I have here, and I'm going to ask it to build an interface with source citations. You can notice here that I'm referencing the correct files, as well as referencing other files where changes need to be made. So let's give Claude the opportunity to come up with a plan for how to solve this particular problem. As always, it's going to read through the files that it thinks are most necessary. It's going to trace its way from the front end to the back end and understand what needs to be implemented. Once we finish getting a plan, we're going to have the opportunity to either approve it or to give Claude some feedback for what might need to be changed. But here, Claude is not directly writing any code. As we see here, we can accept and then continue to auto-accept edits, so we don't have to keep asking for permission. We can manually approve them, or we can tell Claude to change the plan. Taking a quick look at this, I feel pretty good about what we need to do. So let's use that plan with our auto-accept edits. If you ever want to turn this on its own, you can press Shift-Tab just one time. We'll see the to-do list necessary. We'll see what changes need to be made. And now we're going to let Claude Code write to the files that it deems necessary. And then we can test that the implementation works correctly. We'll see here, files are being modified, changes are being made to the codebase. And since we added the auto-accept, we don't have to keep giving permission over and over. A very common workflow that we see is users start by asking for permission each time, and as more trust is given by the human to Claude Code, the auto-accept edits come on a bit more. We can see here, finally, that we can start the application to test the implementation, but in fact, the server is running already, so I'm just going to tell Claude, no thank you. I'll say right off the bat, the server is running, no need to start it yourself. If I want Claude Code to always do that, this is a great opportunity to just put something into the Claude MD file as well. Now that I've let Claude Code know that, it's going to tell me the changes that have been made. So let's test this. Now let's try asking the same question. Let's ask for an outline of a course. And if this has been built correctly, we should be able to see links below for each one of these particular features. If I take a look, right here I have links that will take me to the right place, but the interface is a little bit difficult to see because of this blue link color. If I'd like, I can go ahead and ask Claude Code to make the change necessary to do so. So let's go and follow up with Claude and ask it to make this interface a little bit more pleasant. One option that I have here is just to tell Claude, here is what I want. Another option is to use Claude's visual ability to take a look at a screenshot and analyze what needs to be changed. So let's take a screenshot of what this interface looks like. And we're gonna go ahead and paste that into Claude Code. Back in Claude Code, when I paste that screenshot, I'm going to say, these links are hard to read. Can you make this more visually appealing? We're gonna go ahead and give Claude the ability to analyze that image and figure out where things need to be changed on the front end. And we can see here, I can see the issue. The links are using a default blue color. Let me go ahead and make a change. When you need Claude Code to make visual changes, taking screenshots and showing Claude Code the screenshot is a very powerful way of quickly iterating against what we need. Let's go back to the browser and see what things look like now. We'll ask again for an outline of a course. And if this is done what we've expected, we should see that these links are a bit nicer to take a look at. Let's take a look at our sources and look at that. Much better. The ability for Claude Code to see screenshots and make changes is one of the most commonly used features we see and incredibly valuable to build things quickly. If I want to see those changes to files, I can open those up in VS Code, and Claude Code here will notice I'm in that particular script, and I can ask questions and get information necessary for those files. This is looking good. Let's add a new feature. Instead of building off in the context window what I have now, I'm going to start completely from scratch and clear the conversation history. This is going to allow me to have a longer context window to work with and not have Claude get potentially confused with things that it's seen before that are not relevant to what I'm building now. As we saw before, when we want to build newer features, we're going to use plan mode. In this particular application, I want to add the ability to start a new chat in my interface. So instead of having to refresh the page each time, I'd love for a button here to allow me to reset the conversation and start a new chat again. So let's build that. I'm going to activate plan mode, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in the prompt that I have here. I'll ask Claude Code to add a new chat button, and when clicked, it should clear the conversation in the chat window, start a new session, and handle the necessary cleanup. If you ever need to make a new line and add more context, you can use backslash and press enter. So if there's more I want to add here, I can easily do so. That's a bit more visually appealing. So let's have Claude Code figure out what needs to be built here. As we saw before, if there are changes to the front end that we need, it will find the necessary folders, changes to the back end, the same kind of thing. And here it's going to come up with a comprehensive plan. This idea of being able to plan and think before taking actions is incredibly valuable to build the interfaces that you want. I can take a quick look through this plan, I can see what it's trying to do, and I feel good, so let's build it. If at any point in time I don't like what's being done, I can always press escape and navigate Claude Code in a different direction. As always, we'll see our to-do list that needs to be built. We'll see these files being updated since I have auto accept edits on. And once that's done, we'll move on to the next step. We'll start seeing some JavaScript being added for when clicks occur, starting new conversations. We'll see clearing inputs and focusing, and now building a little bit of styling to match existing sections. We can see here, it's going to test the new functionality. And if I need to tell Claude to not run the server, I can gladly do so if I want. So here, instead of running the server, I'll just tell Claude, don't do it. And since I'm going to find myself doing that a lot, now is a good time to say, don't run the server using /runsh. I will start it myself. I'm going to put this actually in the project memory if I want all other developers to do the same, but maybe other developers might want to run the server themselves. So I'll put that in the project memory that's local and get ignored. So this might be a situation where I like to run the server myself, but maybe other developers don't. Great use case for that Claude local MD file. Now let's go back to the browser and see what we built. I'll refresh the page, and we've got this new chat button here. Let's see if it works. We'll ask again for an outline of the course. We can make sure that our source links look great, and if this does what's expected, We can click on this button and start a new conversation. That's looking good. Let's start a new chat. So even though this is working, it still doesn't look exactly the way that I want. And I can take screenshots and go back and forth with Claude, or I can enhance the tools that Claude Code has out of the box using MCP servers. MCP, or the Model Context Protocol, allows for tools like Claude Code to gain additional functionality to external data sources and systems. What I'm going to do here is add an MCP server for Playwright, a popular tool for opening up a browser, taking screenshots, and analyzing those screenshots. So instead of me manually having to take the screenshot and have a conversation with Claude, we're going to let Claude do it all by itself. The first thing I'm going to do is quit out of Claude Code and add the necessary MCP server. And the command to do so is Claude MCP add, the name of our MCP server, which is Playwright, and then the underlying command to start that MCP server. That is done using npx playwright/mcp at latest. For any MCP server that you want to include, you can reference the documentation. All MCP servers will specify the necessary command to connect to that particular server. Let's open up Claude again, and we'll see what our MCP server looks like. We can use the /mcp command, and here we can see that we have connected successfully to the Playwright MCP server, and we can see the tools available that the Playwright server is giving us. Things like evaluating JavaScript, uploading files, pressing a key, navigating, going back, all of these things that we might manually test, Playwright can do that programmatically for us. I'll press escape to go back a few times, and let's ask Claude Code to navigate to figure out how to build the necessary content.